Hey guys, tonight we travel to a place where the wind has a personality, the houses are made of grass, and your pillow might just be a rock. That's right, we're heading to 18th century Iceland. And you? Well, you've just woken up in it. You probably won't survive the week. But don't worry, we'll go through it together. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing where in the world you're all drifting off. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up, not in your bed, not in your apartment. You're inside what feels like a grassy cave, but somehow drier. Your first breath fills your lungs with smoke. Thick, musky smoke. It's not fire, no need to panic, just the everyday aroma of your new home, a turf house. The structure is made of stacked stones and layers of sod, moss, and more sod. The insulation is impressive, until you realize your nose hairs are freezing anyway. There's a single room shared by the entire family, which includes a grandmother, 2 parents, 3 children, a goat named Scrappy, and now you. You're the newest house guest in a space meant for maybe 2 people and a generous pile of hay. Your bed is a wool-stuffed sack laid over some wooden slats. The slats creak like they're auditioning for a haunted house. As you stretch, something shifts beside you, probably Scrappy again. His hooves are cold against your ankle. Lovely. You try to stand. Your bones disagree. Overnight, your joints have congealed like leftover stew. Your breath forms icicles in the air. No central heating, of course. The only heat source is a low-burning hearth that offers more smoke than warmth. You shuffle over to it, hoping to feel something, anything, but mostly just succeed in coating yourself with ash. Historically, turf houses were the go-to architecture in Iceland because trees were rare and volcanic rock wasn't great for insulation. Sod, oddly enough, did the trick. But it also meant that every house smelled like compost and old socks. You look down at your feet. Bare. The floor is dirt, actual, honest dirt, hardened from years of wear, ash, goat hooves, and spilled porridge. There's something that might be a toe warmer or possibly a preserved turnip near your foot. You decide not to touch it. The morning routine is painfully slow. There's no mirror. Your reflection greets you instead in a dull patch of bronze nailed to the wall. You look like you've lost a fight with the weather and lost badly. It's early, and yet the sun isn't really up. In Iceland, depending on the season, daylight can be more theoretical than real. It's not that the sun is hiding, it's that it's just not showing up today, a common occurrence apparently. You step outside. The door creaks open on wooden hinges that scream in protest. Instantly, you're hit by wind. It doesn't blow so much as slap. Repeatedly, with icy fingers, you shiver, hard. Not like, oops, forgot my jacket shivering, but more like, someone just dropped me in an ice bucket challenge hosted by Odin himself. Historians still debate whether average 18th century Icelanders had a higher cold tolerance or simply didn't live long enough to develop frostbite. The sky is a dull grey. Everything is grey. The moss, the rocks, the sheep, even your thoughts. You look around. No trees, not even a shrub. Just endless mossy mounds, distant mountains, and what might be a sea, or just your imagination. Your first task is simple. Survive until breakfast. And no, there's no coffee. That's not a thing here, not yet. Instead, you're offered something called surmjölk, sour milk. It's not expired. It's supposed to taste that way. If you're lucky, there might be a slice of dried fish from last season. If you're unlucky, it's harkal, fermented shark. The smell alone could flatten a mountain goat. You haven't eaten yet, but already your stomach is considering rebellion. You breathe through your mouth and try to remember how you got here, but Iceland doesn't care. Iceland is indifferent. It doesn't hate you. It just expects you to adapt or freeze trying. Your host family bustles about, layering wool garments, braiding hair, checking on livestock. No one seems fazed by the cold, the smell, or the goat that's now licking your knee. You are. You're fazed by all of it, and it's only 6 a.m. You're trying to be polite. You really are. But when the grandmother hands you a bowl of what appears to be gelatinous fish paste floating in sour milk, your brain briefly short-circuits. This is breakfast. The smell is, let's call it, aggressive. It approaches your nostrils with the enthusiasm of an angry seagull. The shark meat has been fermented underground for months in gravel pits, then hung in open air to dry. Apparently, this process neutralizes the poison. Yes, poison. The shark itself is toxic if eaten fresh. So someone, centuries ago, tasted fresh shark, became violently ill, and then said, "You know what? Let's bury it and try again in 3 months." Bold culinary choices. You lift a spoonful toward your mouth. The spoon is warped wood, probably carved by someone who was both hungry and distracted. You make contact with your lips. The flavor can only be described as ammonia-marinated death. Your host smiles encouragingly. You nod, you chew, you internally scream. Next to you, one of the children is gnawing on a piece of dried seal skin like it's bubble gum. You pretend not to notice. Historically, Icelanders relied heavily on preserved seafood due to their climate and isolation. Without salt, which was expensive and rare, fermentation and drying were survival strategies. That doesn't make them easier to swallow. To chase down the shark, you're given more surmjolk. It's cold, tangy, and tastes like milk that went to war and came back changed. You wonder what the lunch menu looks like and then quickly decide not to. A soft voice behind you says something in Icelandic. You turn. It's the grandfather offering you a flat piece of rye bread, rugbrod, that was baked overnight. You smile in relief. Finally, something normal. You bite in. It's sweet but dense, very dense, like biting into a damp brick. It was baked in a pot buried near a geothermal spring. You chew and chew and chew. Eventually, your jaw tires and gives up. The bread wins. A curious detail. Icelandic farmers often used hot earth to bake bread. It's still done today, actually. In some areas, you can bury dough in the soil and let the geothermal heat slow cook it into what locals affectionately call thunderbread. Delicious. If your teeth are ready for the challenge, as you finish breakfast, heroically, if we're being honest, you step back outside. The wind has not improved. You wrap your cloak tighter. The wool scratches. Everything scratches. Even your socks feel like they were woven out of hedgehogs. The next part of the day is supposed to involve getting dressed, but you're already in full gear. Icelandic fashion in the 1700s doesn't believe in fast changes. Most people own one set of clothing, 2 if they're wealthy. You'll be wearing the same layers all week, possibly all winter. Your outfit consists of a coarse linen undergarment, basically a shirt that hates you, a woolen tunic dyed with lichens or soot, wool trousers, baggy and stiff, leather shoes, tied with sheep intestines, a fur-lined cloak. If you're lucky, you are not. Everything smells faintly of smoke, lanolin, and resignation. The concept of laundry exists here, but not in the way you know it. Clothes are washed seasonally, if that. Soap is homemade from lion fat. Drying takes days, so instead people smoke their clothes over open fires. You now smell like a very confused ham. Historians still debate how frequently Icelanders laundered their garments in this era. Some believe it was only done for ceremonial occasions. Others argue it was more common in urban centres like Reykjavik, which, at this point in history, is still more a village than a city. A child offers you a knitted hat. It's enormous. It flops over your eyes. You thank them and wear it anyway. Your ears are grateful. Someone yells something in the distance. You catch a few words. Hey! Sheep? Scrappy? The goat perks up. Apparently, it's time to start the day. You haven't even finished digesting your ammonia fish smoothie, and now you're headed out to the fields, but not before the grandmother hands you a lunch bundle. It contains a hunk of dried fish, a hard biscuit that could double as a weapon, and another piece of sweet rye bread. There is no dessert, there is no joy. As you tuck it into your cloak, the goat follows closely behind. Whether out of loyalty or habit, you're not sure. You begin walking. Your boots crunch frozen moss. The ground is uneven, like someone tried to flatten a boulder using only their forehead. The horizon is grey on grayer. The air is so crisp it could cut paper. And as you trudge toward your mysterious goat-assisted task, one thought echoes in your mind. You've survived breakfast. Somehow, but lunch is still out there, waiting. You're still chewing. At least, what feels like you are. The ghost of the rye bread lingers in your jaw like a gym injury. Every step you take shakes loose another memory of breakfast. Scrappy, the goat, stays close, probably hoping you drop a crumb or collapse. You trudge across the frozen landscape, escorted by biting wind and the occasional volcanic rock pretending to be a seat. Your destination? A hayfield. Though field may be a bit generous. It's more like a rocky plain where scraggly tufts of grass have decided to make the best of it. The grass here is stubborn, like the people, like you're rapidly becoming. Your job today is simple in theory. Collect dried hay from the ground and pile it up neatly for storage. In practice, less simple. The wind is strong enough to consider a career in demolition, and your fingers are so cold you're not sure they're still attached. Haywork in 18th century Iceland is serious business. With such a short growing season and no grain production to speak of, locals relied on hay not just for livestock, but for survival itself. A failed hay harvest could mean death, not just for animals, for people too. You bend down, pick up a fistful of yellowed grass, and immediately regret everything. The grass is frozen. It snaps in your hands like potato chips. You try again and again. Eventually, you figure out a rhythm. Scoop, stack, shiver, repeat. A man nearby sneezes and nearly falls over. You relate deeply to this. Someone hands you a wooden rake. It's more splinters than tool. Still, you persist. Scrappy watches from a distance, like he's evaluating your technique. He doesn't seem impressed. The sky hasn't changed. It's still a flat, bleak grey. Occasionally, a seagull appears, screams into the void, then vanishes. You start to wonder if the bird is symbolic. Then you remember you haven't blinked in 3 minutes. Lunch comes early, Mostly because everyone is starving, you gather around a rock that has been declared a table. You unwrap your parcel. There it is, the dried fish. It's chewy, salty, and smells like it died twice. You gnaw on it with the grim determination of someone too tired to protest. One of the farmers offers you a drink, misa. It's the watery byproduct of cheese-making, basically whey, but somehow more disappointing. You take a sip. It's warm. From someone's pocket. You politely do not ask whose. A nearby woman begins humming. It's a lullaby, soft and slightly off-key. You don't understand the words, but it soothes you. Icelandic folk songs often carry themes of endurance, isolation, and goats. Probably. That last one is just a hunch you eat slowly. Partly to savor, mostly because your jaw is still recovering from that rye brick. Someone makes a joke in Icelandic. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. You have no idea what was said, but for a moment you feel included. You learn that hay isn't just collected, it's stored meticulously in turf sheds. You help carry bundles across the uneven ground. The wind keeps trying to unbundle them, and you, at one point, you nearly lose your hat. Scrappy heroically retrieves it by stepping on it and sneezing. By early afternoon, your arms are jelly and your face is frozen in a semi-permanent squint. Your nose runs. Constantly, you wipe it on your sleeve. So does everyone. Else, there are no tissues, there is only wool. Historically, the 18th century was a particularly harsh time for Iceland. Famines, cold summers, and volcanic eruptions plagued the island. It wasn't uncommon for entire communities to survive on grass soup and frozen fish alone. And here you are, living that legacy in real time, with a goat as your emotional support. Animal. A curious side note, Icelandic haymakers often use their feet to compress stacks in storage, dancing lightly atop the piles to maximize space. You give it a try and immediately fall off. Scrappy seems to chuckle as the sun lowers, though you'd hardly notice. You begin the walk back to the turf house. The wind slaps you one more time, as if to say, "Good hustle, rookie." You nod at the horizon, as if to reply, "I'll be back tomorrow, probably." Your feet ache, your back creaks, you smell like moss, milk, and despair. But hey, you're halfway to dinner. You've never been so relieved to see smoke rising from a mossy roof. The turf house is barely visible against the endless grey, but the faint curl of smoke from the chimney confirms you're almost home. Your legs feel like boiled twine. Your knees make clicking sounds like someone shaking a bag of bones, which, in this context, feels alarmingly accurate. Scrappy trots ahead, tail wagging as if to say, "Told you it would be horrible. You didn't listen." As you step inside, you're greeted by warmth, not comforting warmth, but the dense, acrid heat of firewood, unwashed bodies, and boiled milk. You inhale. You regret it. The family is gathered around the hearth. The room is dim, lit only by firelight and a single tallow candle that drips wax like it's being punished. The walls are covered in soot. Everything smells vaguely of burnt wool and stale dairy. You remove your cloak, or rather, attempt to. It resists, frozen at the seams by sweat and weather. Eventually, someone helps peel it off like bark from a frost-bitten tree. You thank them with a nod and a wheeze. Dinner is being prepared, or rather, reheated. The pot over the fire contains a stew that might have originated during the Reformation. It's a mixture of root vegetables, dried lamb, and mystery. The family calls it kjötsúpa. You call it food? You sit on a bench covered with woolen cloth that's been flattened by centuries of backsides. You're handed a wooden bowl and a carved spoon, both stained with thyme and turnip. You scoop, blow, and taste. It's edible. Not good, but edible. The lamb is chewy and vaguely gamey. The carrots are more suggestion than substance. The broth, however, is hot. And in this moment, that alone makes it miraculous. While you eat, the family chats in low voices. Icelandic has a soothing rhythm when spoken softly, like the murmur of distant glaciers melting. You don't understand a word, but it washes over you like snowfall. Someone passes you a small piece of dried seaweed. A snack, apparently. It's salty and leathery, like the ocean tried to become jerky and gave up halfway through. After dinner, you help with chores. Yes, after. The firewood needs restacking. The animals must be checked. One of the children reports that a sheep is missing. Again, you and Scrappy are drafted into the search party. Outside, the wind has softened, slightly. The sky is darker now, a murky navy speckled with stars. The cold bites, but it's more of a nibble. You follow a narrow path around the side of the house, guided by the faint bleats of an indignant sheep. There she is, lodged between two rocks, looking deeply unimpressed. You coax her free with a bit of hay and an unconvincing smile. Back in the pen she goes. Mission accomplished. Returning inside, you're given a sliver of dried fruit, a rare treat. Probably imported, possibly hoarded for months. You savor it slowly, like a squirrel clutching a precious acorn. It tastes like shriveled hope. Sweet, slightly fermented, and gone in 2 bites. The room settles into quiet activity. A woman spins wool with rhythmic precision. A child carves a button from bone. The grandfather snores gently in the corner, mouth slightly open, like a beached seal finding peace. You sit on your bench, wrap a blanket around your shoulders, and let the atmosphere sink into your bones. This is the part of the day that feels most human, most tolerable, a moment of peace. Even in this unforgiving world, there is still rhythm, routine, warmth, however smoky. Historians still debate how much of 18th century Icelandic life was spent indoors. With brutal winters and limited daylight, many communities developed rich indoor cultures, storytelling, knitting, chess, and ballads. These were their lifelines against the crushing silence of the cold. One of the children starts telling a story. It's about a fisherman who was swallowed by a whale and came out a poet. The adults laugh knowingly. You laugh too, because the alternative is weeping into your seaweed. Soon the household begins preparing for sleep. There are no bedrooms, just corners. Nesting spaces. Everyone finds a spot. You're assigned a space near the door, where the wind can gently remind you that comfort is a modern myth. You lie down on your wool mattress. The blanket smells like lanolin and something deeply mammalian. You try not to dwell on it. Scrappy curls up beside you. His breath is warm. His hooves are not. You close your eyes, and the turf house creaks around you like an ancient ship in a frozen sea. You wake up before dawn, not because you want to, but because something cold and wet is touching your forehead. It's Scrappy. Again, he's trying to share your blanket, which is noble, except goats are not particularly gentle bedfellows. You gently push him away, but he responds by sneezing directly into your ear. It's going to be a long morning. You sit up. Your neck protests. Your back stages a minor revolt. The fire in the hearth has gone out, and the room is now filled with that unmistakable early morning dampness that makes wool feel like wearing soup. You grope around for your shoes, still damp, somehow colder, and slip them on with an audible grimace. Outside, a pale pre-dawn light is bleeding into the sky. It's not exactly morning, but it's the best the sun can offer right now. Icelandic winter daylight is stingy. Depending on the time of year, you might get 3 hours of real light, and that's if the weather cooperates, which it never does. You wash your face using a bowl of yesterday's meltwater. It's barely above freezing and smells faintly of peat. You consider skipping it, but one of the children is already watching you with judgmental eyes. You splash your face and instantly regret every decision that brought you here. Breakfast is light. Another piece of that invincible rye bread and a chunk of goat cheese that seems personally offended by your presence. Still, it's calories. You chew quietly while the household comes to life, everyone rising, layering clothes, preparing for another day of not dying. Today's task, gathering fuel. In 18th century Iceland, firewood was a luxury. Trees were almost non-existent, and the few that existed were more decorative than useful. Most homes relied on driftwood, dried dung, and peat for heat and cooking. So today, you're collecting poop. Welcome to the energy sector. You're handed a small wooden shovel and a sack. Scrappy follows, perhaps assuming you're going on some grand adventure. He is both correct and very, very wrong. You head out across a frost-bitten plain behind the house. The wind returns, a loyal and relentless companion. Your mission is to find dried sheep droppings which are scattered across the land like nature's cruel confetti. You're expected to collect the driest ones, because they burn better. Moist poop is frowned upon in polite society. You begin your work, scoop, plop, sack, repeat. Occasionally you find some peat, thick, spongy earth that burns slowly. It's considered premium fuel. You dig it out with care, like unearthing treasure, except it smells like old dishwater and decayed moss. As you toil, a young boy from the household approaches. He's maybe 8, dressed like a miniature Viking, and incredibly good at spotting prime poop. He offers tips in rapid Icelandic. You nod solemnly, pretending to understand. Scrappy sneezes again. You wonder if he's allergic to you. By mid-morning, your sack is half full and your soul is half gone. You pause to stretch. Your hands are stiff, your nose is running, and your boots are filled with a suspicious crunching sound. It might be hay. It might be regret. Back at the house, you empty your collection into a wooden bin near the hearth. The grandmother gives you an approving grunt. It's the highest praise you've received since arriving. As a reward, you're handed a small bowl of svidasulta, boiled sheep head pressed into jelly. You blink, you gulp, you eat. It's textured. Historians note that no part of the animal went to waste in Icelandic households. The head, hooves, and even bones were all used for food, tools, or trade. Frugality wasn't a virtue, it was survival. After your meal, you help hang damp clothing near the hearth. Everything smells like smoke and damp wool. You've stopped noticing, or maybe your nose has simply given up. One of the older girls offers to show you how to spin wool. She hands you a spindle, demonstrates once, and then watches expectantly. You try, you fail, you try again. The wool tangles into something resembling a haunted nest. She nods, somewhat pleased. As you spin, the family begins preparing to tell sagas. Not the dramatic, violent epics you might expect. Tonight's story is about a farmer who once lost his sheep and found enlightenment. It's part parable, part weather report, part dream logic. You find it strangely comforting. Outside, the wind howls. The turf walls don't block the sound entirely. It seeps through like a lullaby sung by an angry glacier. Inside, you wrap yourself in your blanket, body aching, mind buzzing with sensory overload. Tomorrow, they say, is a church day, which sounds peaceful, until you remember it's a 2-hour walk, uphill, in sleet. You awaken to the sound of boots on dirt and the quiet rustle of woolen cloaks. Someone hands you a hard biscuit without breaking stride. That's breakfast today. There is no ceremony, just cold bread and colder wind. It's Sunday, which means one thing: church. In 18th century Iceland, attending church was not merely a spiritual ritual, it was a legal requirement. Skipping too often could land you in real trouble. So, even if your knees sound like a percussion ensemble and your soul hasn't thawed since Wednesday, you're going. You layer yourself in your single set of clothing: wool tunic, linen undergarments, coarse socks, and the fur-lined cloak you borrowed from the kind neighbor who pities your modern softness. The hat droops over your eyebrows again. You leave it. The walk to church begins in near darkness. The sun, reluctant as always, is dragging its heels behind a blanket of fog. Your breath curls ahead of you like steam from a feeble kettle. Ahead, the family walks in silence, their footsteps crunching on the icy soil in sync, like a procession of muffled ghosts. Church is located 2 valleys over. There's no road, just a path made visible by repeated suffering. You follow it with a kind of numb determination, grateful that Scrappy has opted to stay home today. You suspect he's smarter than you. The land stretches infinitely in every direction. Rocks, moss, the occasional confused sheep. No trees, of course. Trees are myths here. The wind is quieter this morning, but only because the cold has other ways of making itself known. Your teeth ache, your earlobes go numb. You begin fantasizing about central heating. As you trudge, someone sings. A hymn, low and haunting. The melody blends into the landscape, as if the mountains themselves are humming back. Icelandic hymns often date back centuries, passed from generation to generation like wool or quiet disapproval. The words are foreign, but the sorrow in the tone is universal. Halfway there, you cross a stream. It's mostly frozen, but one false step sends icy water lapping over your shoe. It feels like being kissed by a polar bear with bad intentions. Eventually the church appears, a small turf structure with a wooden cross atop a sloped roof. It looks more like a hobbit house than a place of worship. Still, it's beautiful in its austerity. Smoke rises from the chimney. A good sign. You step inside. The warmth is faint but noticeable. Your nostrils twitch with the scent of dried herbs, damp wood, and fermented milk again. The congregation consists of maybe 20 people, all bundled in enough wool to outfit a herd of alpacas. They nod politely. No one smiles. Smiling is for summer. The service begins. The priest, an older man with eyebrows like frost-covered caterpillars, begins to read. His voice is deep, steady, and slightly nasal. The sermon is in Icelandic, of course, and at least twice as long as it needs to be. You try to stay awake. The combination of sleep deprivation, bodily exhaustion, and poetic monotony is powerful. Your head droops. You jerk upright. You bite your lip. You stare at a crack in the ceiling and wonder how long it's been growing. You glance around. Others are nodding off too. It's not disrespect, it's tradition. Historically, church services in rural Iceland could last up to 3 hours. The buildings weren't heated except by human proximity and occasional goat. People endured it because they had to, and also because, for many, it was the only time they'd see anyone outside their household all week. Someone behind you coughs, not politely, wetly. You lean forward instinctively. Mid-sermon, there's a sudden silence. The priest has paused. A baby has started crying. The sound echoes like thunder in the still room. The mother stands, exits, returns. All is forgiven. The priest resumes as if nothing happened. You begin to daydream. About modern things, microwaves, socks with elasticity, tap water, your old bed. Everything you've ever taken for granted becomes a cinematic memory montage narrated by your frostbitten toes. Finally, mercifully, the service ends. A hymn closes the proceedings. The same tune from earlier, now louder, richer. For a moment, the voices lift you out of your aches and hunger. The melody carries a kind of resilience, the kind that can only come from surviving this place, season after season, storm after storm. Outside, the wind greets you like an old, terrible friend. You brace for the walk back. The family doesn't delay. The day isn't over. There are still chores to be done. Souls may be clean, but the sheep are not. The return trek feels shorter, mostly because your legs have gone full autopilot. You cross the stream again. This time, you don't even care when the water seeps into your boot. Back home, you're handed a bowl of warm gruel. It's thick, beige, and forgettable. But it's hot. That's what matters. You sit by the fire, socks steaming, fingers wrapped around the bowl. And for the first time all day, you almost feel human again, until you realize the goat is chewing your cloak. Again. You spend the afternoon like most people in 18th century Iceland did, trying not to freeze and hoping nothing catches fire. The hearth crackles with its familiar smoky scent, burning a blend of dried sheep, droppings, peat, and driftwood scavenged from last summer's storms. It doesn't give off much heat, but it's the heart of the house, both literally and socially. Everyone gathers around it, drawn in by the illusion of warmth and the promise of something to do. Today that something is mending, you're handed a pile of wool garments and a curved bone needle. Your task, repair a pair of woolen socks that look like they've been through a Viking raid and lost. You stab your thumb within the first 5 seconds. Someone giggles, you glare, but the humor is deserved. The woman beside you is expertly darning a sleeve. Her hands move with hypnotic calm, like she's sewing fog into place. She hums a tune, slow, circular, oddly comforting. You try to follow the rhythm. You stab your other thumb. Progress. Historically, Icelanders made everything by hand. Clothing, tools, furniture. Nothing was disposable. Mending wasn't a chore, it was a weekly necessity. Every family member, regardless of age, had a role in maintenance, and wool was the material of choice for nearly everything except utensils and dreams. As you fumble with the needle, one of the children fetches a small bucket of warm water for foot soaking. Apparently, this is a thing, a form of relaxation. You're skeptical until your feet go in. The sensation is instant bliss, or maybe just shock. Either way, you're grateful. While your toes stew, the family begins preparing a special treat, flatbread. Thin, circular, and cooked directly on a hot stone near the hearth, it smells faintly of scorched hope and grain. It's rare, made only when a bit of imported flour can be spared. You get a piece. It's still warm, slightly smoky, and vanishes in 4 bites. Scrappy watches you the entire time with the intensity of someone who deeply resents your good fortune. Then comes story time. Not just any story, a ghost story. Iceland in the 18th century is rich with tales of spirits, trolls, huldufolk, hidden people, and mysterious happenings. The isolation, darkness, and harshness of the environment practically beg for eerie storytelling. Tonight's tale is about a farmer who stole a sheep from an elf, only to be cursed with chronic hay loss for 7 winters. Historians still debate whether these stories served as social controls, entertainment, or simply coping mechanisms. Probably all three. What's certain is they're told with great seriousness, and everyone listens. The grandfather begins the tale with a gravelly tone, staring into the flames like they hold the ending. You listen, fully engaged, the sock in your hand long forgotten. The room darkens further. The only light is from the fire and a single oil lamp. As the story builds, creaking footsteps, glowing eyes in the fog, you feel a chill that isn't entirely from the wind slipping through the turf walls. You scoot closer to the hearth. Scrappy does too. The goat is afraid. You're in good company. Eventually, the story ends, not with resolution, but with a warning. Never step on the hill west of the sheep pen after midnight, or you'll be led astray by song and never return. You glance at the children. They're not laughing. Later, as night settles in completely, you're asked to help with the lanterns. Each one must be cleaned and filled with oil. Your hands, still sore from the needle incident, now smell like fish oil and soot. You accidentally smear black across your cheek. No one mentions it. You look like a chimney sweep with commitment issues. Bedtime arrives without announcement. People simply start curling up where they sit. You do the same, settling back into your spot by the door. You wrap yourself in the blanket that smells by now like a blend of goat, wood smoke, and poorly concealed fear. The fire dims. The room goes quiet. Only the crackle of embers and the occasional sleepy snore disturb the stillness. You close your eyes and wonder briefly if you stepped on the cursed hill by accident. Then sleep takes you before you can finish the thought. You wake in the middle of the night, unsure of what roused you. The room is silent, thick with the scent of wool, ash, and close air. For a moment, you lie still, listening to the soft breathing of the family around you and the occasional shifting, groan of the turf walls adjusting to the cold. Then you hear it again. A faint creak. Your eyes dart toward the door. It's not moving, but something outside is, or was. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the nearest sleeper, a small child, cradling a hand-carved wooden sheep. The fire has dwindled to embers. You throw on your cloak and shuffle to the door, unfastening the leather strap that keeps the cold out and hopefully the spirits in. Outside, the world is quieter than should be, legal. There's no wind, no bleating, no footsteps, just the heavy silence of snow falling softly on moss, rock, and roof. A full blanket has settled over the land, muting everything. Your breath hangs in the air like a ghost with nowhere to go. You spot it. Just past the edge of the sheep pen near the infamous hill the grandfather warned about, there's a faint light, flickering, moving. You stare. It disappears. You stare harder. It returns. No one else is awake. Not even Scrappy, who is curled into a suspiciously luxurious pile of straw, dreaming of fermented oats and chaos. You consider waking someone, but you're new here. A guest. Also, you don't know how to say there's a flickering light on the cursed hill in Icelandic without sounding like you skipped dinner and started eating lichen, so you do the only thing that makes sense. You go back inside and pretend. None of it happened. In the morning, you're not sure if it was a dream. No one else mentions it. Instead, the topic at breakfast is a goat birth. Not Scrappy's, thankfully, but a neighbour's. You chew on some warmed leftover flatbread while listening to a woman describe, in painstaking detail, the process of untangling goat limbs during labour. It's both informative and unnecessary. After breakfast, the family sets off toward the neighbouring farm. You're invited to join. Apparently, this is a major social occasion. There might even be soup. You trek across the snow, boots crunching, wool creaking, nose running. The neighbouring farm is about an hour away by foot. On the way, you pass a field of standing stones. The oldest daughter points at one and says something that includes the word troll. You nod solemnly. When you arrive, the scene is lively. By Icelandic standards, which means 2 families are present and someone is humming. A pot of soup simmers on an outdoor fire, and a boy is trying to juggle rocks while a sheep watches judgmentally. You sit on a log, share a bowl of what tastes like lamb and root stew, and listen to the conversation flowing around you. You catch the occasional word, weather, hay, elf, but mostly you let the sound of it lull you into a kind of linguistic hypnosis. One of the women brings out a woven pouch and offers you a strange, dark lump, dried whey. You accept, you chew. It squeaks. No one reacts. During the visit, someone plays a fiddle. It's out of tune, possibly out of key, but the melody is sweet and the rhythm gentle. The children dance in circles, woolen mittens flapping like awkward wings. You find yourself smiling without realizing it. Later, while helping carry a pail of water from a nearby stream, you strike up a halting conversation with a teenage boy who's learned a few words of Danish, which you understand even less than Icelandic. Still, it's enough to learn that he wants to be a fisherman someday. You nod like you approve, though inwardly you wonder how anyone survives that line of work in these conditions. Historians still debate the level of interaction between rural Icelandic families during the 18th century. Isolation was the norm, but occasional gatherings, especially around events like births, funerals, or the rare surplus of soup, offered vital social connection. As the sun begins its slow grey descent, your group says farewell. Hugs are exchanged, baskets of dried herbs and cheese are traded. Someone slips you a folded cloth with an embroidered rune. For luck, they say. Back at your turf home, the family settles in for another quiet evening. You sit near the hearth, spinning the rune between your fingers, listening to the wind pick up again outside. The silence between gusts is as loud as the snow. You begin to doze, and that's when you remember the light. Still, no explanation, no mention. Maybe the hill was never cursed? Or maybe no one speaks of it because they know exactly what it is. You pull the blanket tighter and pretend you're not thinking about it. The next day begins with a shiver you feel in your bones before you even open your eyes. Your breath forms little clouds in the dim light of the turf house. Someone is already stoking the hearth with a mixture of peat and yesterday's finest, sheep droppings. You're getting used to the smell. That, or your sense of smell has surrendered. You sit up slowly. The floor is colder than usual. One of your boots is damp, though you don't know how. There was no water nearby last night. Scrappy eyes you from his straw nest. He blinks. You blink back. A silent agreement passes between you. No unnecessary movement until food appears. Breakfast is served in a wooden bowl handed down the line. It's skaya, an Icelandic dairy product somewhere between yogurt and cheese, thick, slightly sour, and eaten with a wooden spoon that's seen better decades. There's a drizzle of something sweet on top, likely imported molasses, a rare luxury. You savor every sticky spoonful. Even Scrappy seems impressed. Today's task is indoor, helping to process wool. You're handed a basket overflowing with greasy sheep fleece. The woman leading the operation gestures for you to sit beside her. She begins to tease the wool apart with her fingers, removing bits of straw, dirt, and the occasional mystery speck. You mimic her movements, earning a nod of mild approval. The wool is then carded, combed with flat wooden paddles lined with rows of nails. It's rhythmic, calming. You take turns carding, your fingers quickly sore but grateful for the fire's warmth. Spinning comes next. You watch her twist the fibers with practiced precision, drawing them out into thread using a drop spindle. Your attempt results in something more akin to a wool spaghetti. Still, she smiles. It's the effort that counts. Wool was the backbone of the Icelandic economy during this era. With little access to metals or grain, families survived by exporting homespun cloth and rope. A household's productivity was often judged by how much yarn they could spin during the winter. You're not helping that metric much. As the day wears on, the family transitions seamlessly between tasks, patching shoes, repairing a fishing net, carving wooden pegs for drying racks. Everyone contributes, even the younger children. You're handed a lump of beeswax and asked to soften it by kneading. It takes longer than expected and you lose feeling in your thumbs, but the wax eventually yields. In the late afternoon, a man from a neighboring farm stops by. He's tall, cloaked, with a weather-beaten face that looks like it was carved by the wind itself. He speaks briefly with the grandfather, handing him a sealed letter wrapped in oiled hide. You watch curious. Letters are rare here, expensive, difficult to send and often delivered on foot across frozen valleys. This one is opened with reverence. The grandfather reads silently, his brows furrowing. Then he folds it and says something that makes everyone go quiet. A funeral. Tomorrow. You. Don't ask who. It doesn't matter, really. In a place like this, every loss is felt by all. Dinner is quieter than usual. You're served warm stew, heavy on barley, light on meat, and thick slices of the thunderbread. No one speaks much. The candle on the table burns lower than usual, the flame flickering in rhythm with the wind outside. After the meal, the family begins to prepare a small gift to bring to the funeral, a woven sash, some dried herbs, a jar of skyr. You help wrap the items in cloth and watch as they're placed in a basket near the door. That night, the wind returns with fury. The turf walls hold firm, but every gust sounds like a warning. You pull your blanket tighter, lying in your usual corner, the memory of the day lingering in your chest like smoke. You think again of the letter, the silence, the shared labor, the stillness after dinner. There's a weight to life here, not oppressive, but constant, heavy like the wool you helped clean, coarse like the bread, necessary. Historians still debate whether the isolation of rural Iceland fostered emotional resilience or quiet desperation. You suspect it's both. As you drift off to sleep, the house creaks around you. Somewhere, far off, a lullaby begins. You don't know the words, but the melody is old. You hum along. You think maybe, just maybe, you understand a little more now, and Scrappy, curled beside you once again, snores softly in agreement. Morning arrives with the sound of boots, lacing, and hushed voices. Today is not a work day. Today is for walking, remembering, and offering what little comfort one can give in a land that has very little to spare. The household rises early to prepare for the funeral. The grandmother brushes her shawl with a bone comb. The father polishes his boots with lard and ash. The children wear their best wool, identical to their everyday wool, only with fewer holes. You're handed your now familiar cloak and an extra scarf, likely borrowed from a neighbour. Scrappy stays behind today. He watches you leave from the doorway, chewing on something that might have once been your mitten. You join the group, walking across the snow-dusted plains. The route is long, 3 valleys and a shallow river, but familiar. These paths are well worn by necessity. In a community like this, death visits often enough to etch trails into the land. There is no rush. No one speaks above a whisper. The only sound is the crunch of boots and the occasional creak of a sled being dragged by rope. It carries a small crate, gifts for the grieving family. Cheese, dried fish, wool scraps, and a carved spoon. As you walk, your mind wanders. Funerals in 18th century Iceland were deeply communal affairs. In a place where survival required cooperation, mourning was collective. Everyone came. Distance was not an excuse. Harsh weather was expected. What mattered was presence, and bringing something useful. Eventually, the house appears on the horizon, a small cluster of turf buildings, smoke curling from one chimney, a dog barking once before retreating. You can feel the grief in the stillness. It settles over the place like frost. The ceremony itself is short. A priest recites verses in a voice worn like stone. The body lies in a simple wooden coffin resting on a table draped with hand-woven cloth. No flowers, no music, just wool and wind and words. You stand at the back among neighbours and strangers, all faces quietly weathered, all eyes fixed on the same single point. The coffin is carried outside by 6 men and 1 woman. You follow as it's taken to a small churchyard, fenced with stacked stones. The grave is shallow. Digging into frozen earth is laborious, but it's enough. The box is lowered, hands fold, heads bow. Silence. Then, one by one, people approach. They drop small tokens into the grave. A coin, a piece of driftwood, a folded note. You're handed a flat stone with a symbol etched into it, a rune of comfort, someone says. You place it gently on the earth and step back. Historians still discuss the blend of Christian and pre-Christian elements in Icelandic burial customs. Pagan runes, Christian hymns, offerings to the land spirits, all coexist here like layers of snow from different storms. Afterward, there's no reception. No catered trays or black dresses. Just a slow walk back, heads low, voices softer. A few people share memories. Others simply walk in silence, bundled tightly in their cloaks, breathing clouds into the frigid afternoon. At home, the mood is subdued. The fire is rekindled, and a kettle of barley water warms on the hearth. It tastes faintly of nothing and everything, heat, time, fatigue. You sip it slowly. Dinner is eaten quietly, bread, broth, and a small wedge of dried meat. Scrappy doesn't beg tonight. Even he seems to know. Later, the family gathers for evening prayers. A few lines spoken aloud. A moment of stillness. A shared exhale. Then the grandmother begins to sing. It's not a sad song, not entirely. It has an upward lilt, like the sound of a long winter evening accepting itself. You close your eyes. The melody settles on your shoulders like a warm shawl. Your body aches from the walk, but your heart feels still, not full, not empty, just quiet. You find your place by the wall, wrap yourself in the heavy blanket, and lie down. The fire snaps gently. The wind outside has finally tired itself out. You stare at the ceiling until the dark becomes familiar, and for once, you sleep without dreaming. You wake up sore, but not in the usual "I've been trampled by a goat and slept on a wooden plank" sort of way. Today's soreness is deeper, not physical, something quieter, heavier. A reminder that even the most monotonous days in 18th century Iceland are sometimes interrupted by something more permanent. There's a different energy in the turf house this morning. Not solemn, life can't afford to pause for long here, but subdued. The grandmother hums while stirring a pot of thin porridge. The children are less boisterous. Even Scrappy is unusually still, curled in the same straw pile like a furry punctuation mark. You're served your usual breakfast, a ladle of gruel with a chunk of hard bread that you soften by letting it soak like laundry. It's not good, it's not bad. It just is. Today, your job is to help with medicine. That's right. You're joining the ranks of 18th century Icelandic healers, which is kind of like saying you're a dentist at a medieval battlefield. Enthusiastic, underqualified, and surrounded by dubious tools. Your patient? A sheep? Of course, she's limping. Nothing tragic. Just a minor injury from yesterday's snow-wandering adventure. You follow the eldest son into the shed, where she's lying on a bed of hay, chewing in slow, deliberate circles like she's seen it all before and is unimpressed. You're handed a small pouch of dried moss. It's fjallagrös, Icelandic rock moss, used for centuries as a remedy for infections, coughs, and general misfortune. It smells like old bark and herbal tea. The poultice is simple. You grind the moss with a rock, mix it with hot water, and spread it gently on the wound. The sheep stares at you with deep skepticism. You do your best. She doesn't bite you, which is progress. Inside, the family is preparing people medicine. Not vastly different, but with more ritual. A cousin has arrived, coughing dryly into a woolen sleeve. The grandmother gets to work, boiling water and adding various ingredients. The same moss, dried dandelion, a chunk of brown resin that smells like tree sap and regret. The result is poured into a ceramic mug and handed over with a nod. No instructions, just drink. He does. His face contorts. He lives. Historically, Icelanders used what they had: herbs, seaweed, fermented roots, animal fat, and spiritual incantations. Bloodletting was rare but not unheard of. And fermented shark? That, apparently, cured almost everything, if it didn't kill you first. You're invited to prepare a simple balm next: rendered sheep fat mixed with crushed juniper berries and a pinch of volcanic ash. You stir it slowly over the fire until it thickens. It smells surprisingly tolerable. Someone rubs a dab on their temples and sighs. You feel proud, possibly dangerous. Then comes the real treatment: air. One of the girls opens the door. A gust of freezing wind blasts through the house like a Viking with poor social skills. The patient is ushered to the doorway and told to breathe deeply. This is fresh air therapy, and it's taken very seriously. The idea is that the wind can cure what the body cannot, or at least humble it. You take a turn too. Your sinuses are instantly cleared, also possibly damaged, but you feel alert. The rest of the afternoon is quiet. People come and go, neighbours with aches, animals with limps, a child with a splinter so large it should be paying rent. You hand out cloths, boil water, mash herbs. You are now an apprentice in the ancient art of Icelandic improvisational medicine. Historians note that most rural Icelandic families had at least one member responsible for folk healing. Women often held this knowledge, passed down from their mothers, using natural remedies and traditional techniques, mixed with prayers, runes, and instinct. Later, as the fire burns low and the patient snores softly in various corners, you sit with the grandmother. She shows you a small leather-bound book filled with herbal drawings and notes in looping handwriting. It's part guide, part journal, part spellbook. You can't read it, but you understand its importance. She points at a sketch of moss, then at your hands. A rare smile flickers, you nod, and for the first time you feel useful. The next morning greets you with the low, familiar hum of the wind, only this time it's humming through your boots. At some point in the night, they slid too close to the door and absorbed the ambient cold like particularly pessimistic sponges. You slip them on anyway. They protest. You do not care. Today is laundry day, which in 18th century Iceland is less about fresh scents and more about surviving an encounter with water that has never once met room temperature. It's also a community event, because scrubbing wool in a glacial stream is more bearable when everyone else is shivering too. After a quick breakfast, porridge again, but this time with a hint of crushed dried berries, luxury, you set off with the family toward the stream. Each person carries bundles of garments wrapped in cloth or stashed in buckets. One child carries only socks, small, stiff, and frozen in aggressive poses. The stream is half frozen, its surface cracked like an aging mirror. Your breath fogs immediately and your hands begin to stiffen before you even dip them in. But dip them you must. The grandmother demonstrates: soak, scrub with ash, soap, rinse, beat on a rock. You follow her lead. The water bites. You feel your soul briefly exit your body. But the rhythm sets in: scrub, dunk, slap, repeat. The soap is made from animal fat and lye, boiled for hours, pungent and potent. It doesn't smell like flowers, it smells like penance. Historically, Icelandic families washed clothing a few times per season, often in designated washing sites near hot springs, if they were lucky. You are not near a hot spring. You are near a stream whose main hobby is freezing things. After half an hour, you can no longer feel your fingers. This is apparently when it's time to switch to rinsing. The rinse water is colder. You wonder briefly if this is a prank. The children laugh, not at you, just generally. That somehow makes it worse. Your hands turn red, then pink, then something between blue and existential. Still, the clothes begin to look less grim. Some of the wool sheds its soot. A shirt regains its original beige. Even the socks seem to sigh in relief. The grandmother nods again. You beam, or you would, if your face weren't frozen in a mild grimace of detergent-based trauma. Once everything is washed, the garments are wrung out and laid across a wide net strung between rocks to dry in the icy wind. They'll freeze solid first, then eventually dry, like fish or emotions. Back at the house, someone has prepared a warm drink, barley tea, weak and pale, but sweetened slightly with honey. You cradle it with trembling hands, watching steam rise and rejoin the roof. Inside, a new task begins, mending what couldn't survive the stream. You're handed a tunic with 3 large holes and asked to patch it using old fabric scraps and bone needles. You do your best. It ends up looking like the tunic lost a fight with a very angry squirrel, but it's technically functional. Someone chuckles softly. You take that as a compliment. Later in the day, the conversation shifts to dyeing. A pot of boiling water is prepared, and in go crushed lichens, onion skins, and something called bladafura, a plant that yields a dusky blue. The smell is earthy, not unpleasant. The wool yarn is added, and you watch as the color slowly seeps in. The process is long, patient, and slightly magical. Dyeing was a treasured skill in 18th century Iceland. With limited imports and no synthetic options, families turned to nature for their colors, berries for reds, lichens for greens and browns, and even iron-rich muds for grays. The resulting garments had deep, muted tones like the landscape itself. As the yarn simmers, you're asked to help twist some into bundles for storage. You do? Fingers sticky and stained. There's something deeply satisfying about the texture. The soft give of wool, the tightness of a good knot. By evening, the laundry is half dry and half stiff. Some garments are gently reheated by the hearth to speed the process. You help hang them over racks and the room begins to smell faintly cleaner. Not clean, but cleaner. Dinner is a thick soup made from leftover gruel, bits of smoked fish and wild herbs. It's surprisingly comforting. You eat slowly, feeling the warmth seep back into your bones. One of the children sits beside you and hands you a small, lopsided glove. "Yours," they say in halting Danish. "You cold, I fix." You take it. It's clearly hand-stitched, uneven but warm. Your eyes sting slightly. You blame the soap fumes from earlier. That night, you sleep with the glove tucked inside your blanket, just in case. Outside, the laundry flaps gently in the wind, like flags declaring quiet victory. You wake up to a rumble in the distance. At first, you assume it's thunder. Then you remember this is Iceland. It could be thunder, it could be a rock slide, or it could be something significantly more dramatic. You stumble to the door, still, wrapped in your blanket, and peer outside. Smoke, not from a chimney, no. This is darker, thicker, and rising from the western horizon like someone just set fire to the sky. The wind carries the faint scent of sulfur and burnt earth. It takes you a moment, but the realization creeps in. Volcanic activity. Someone behind. You mutters a word you don't recognize, but the tone is unmistakable. Concern. People begin moving, checking animals, securing doors, whispering. Even Scrappy seems unusually alert, standing beside you like a furry barometer. You ask what's happening, and someone gestures toward the distant smoke, then shrugs. It's not panic. It's more of an exhausted recognition, like someone seeing an old enemy walk into the pub. Eruptions weren't uncommon in 18th century Iceland. In fact, some of the most devastating events in the country's history, like the 1783 Laki eruption, occurred during this period. That one released so much toxic gas, it changed global temperatures and caused a famine that wiped out a quarter of Iceland's population. This probably isn't that. Probably. Still, precautions must be taken. You help carry buckets of water to the main room. Windows are sealed with wax-soaked cloths. Extra food is placed in baskets by the door, and the animals are herded closer to the turf walls for warmth and shelter. The atmosphere turns thick, not just with smoke, but with memory, like the air itself is remembering every eruption that's ever happened. Ash begins to fall by midday, light at first, like snow that forgot how to sparkle. Then heavier, grey flakes settling on the roof, the ground, your shoulders. You wipe your face and see soot on your fingers. Inside, the fire is burning brighter than usual. The family is quiet, focused. No one complains. You offer to help grind more moss for poultices. There's always fear of lung sickness when ash is in the air. The grandmother nods, handing you the mortar. You pound the dried moss slowly, rhythmically, while, outside the wind shifts, it carries the ash sideways now, and a dark haze fills the sky. It's not night, but it might as well be. The daylight dims until only the hearthlight remains steady. Dinner is early and eaten quickly. Stew, again, fortified with dried peas and a slice of thunder bread. No one talks much. It's not fear that fills the room, it's endurance, a kind of ancestral patience bred from centuries of fire and ice. After the meal, the family gathers for a story, not to distract from the danger, but to reclaim normalcy. The father speaks this time, his voice calm and even. He tells a tale of a fisherman who angered the volcano by stealing a glowing rock from a lava field. The fisherman's boat was never found, but his hat washed ashore, still warm. The children shiver in delight. You do too. Historians have noted that Icelandic folklore is deeply entwined with its geology. Volcanoes, earthquakes, hot springs, they're not just natural phenomena here. They're characters, entities. Sometimes gods, sometimes devils, always watching. Later you help reinforce the roof with extra turf slabs. Ash accumulation can collapse even the best-built homes. You work beside the oldest son, neither of you speaking, passing blocks of sod like bricks made of ancient patience. As night settles in, you find yourself near the hearth again, polishing, a wooden bowl with a cloth until it gleams faintly. The room is warm, dry, and quiet, shielded from the chaos outside by 2 feet of earth and the sheer stubbornness of its inhabitants. You glance at the door. Ash continues to fall, soft and steady. But you're inside, and for tonight, that's enough. The world outside is grey. You wake to find the daylight barely changed from the darkness of night. A dull, ash-coloured haze presses against the tiny window, filtering everything into a monochrome quiet. It's like someone draped a heavy wool blanket over the sky and forgot to shake it out. The hearth is already lit. You join the others, rubbing your eyes with hands that still smell faintly of moss and smoke. Breakfast is unusually sweet today, a treat. Baked barley cakes with a smear of fermented butter and a drizzle of something vaguely resembling syrup. You chew slowly, savouring every bite. Scrappy begs for a taste and is denied. He sulks dramatically, as only a goat can. The ashfall has slowed, but it's still there, soft flakes swirling in the wind like slow-motion confetti at the world's most depressing festival. You help sweep the roof using a bundle of dried branches tied together with goat sinew. It's back-breaking, chilly work, but necessary. The weight of ash can collapse a turf house in days if left unchecked. Halfway through, your back cramps. You lean on the broom, exhaling a cloud of breath into the gritty air. From this height, you can see other turf houses dotting the landscape, smoke curling up from chimneys, tiny figures shuffling through the haze, roofs being cleared with the same stubborn resolve. It's oddly beautiful. You return inside, dusted, with soot, and wash your hands with snow scraped from a shaded pile behind the house. It melts slowly in your palms, leaving a cold bite that lingers deep into your knuckles. The rest of the day is spent indoors. You help make candles, a careful process involving melted tallow poured into carved wooden molds, then cooled and trimmed. The house fills with the rich, greasy scent of animal fat. Not pleasant, but better than pitch-dark nights. You trim wicks with a bone knife, marveling at how much light such small things can offer. Later, the children bring out bone dice and challenge you to a game. The rules are unclear and likely made up as they go. You lose repeatedly. They cheer anyway. At some point, they begin betting chores. You end up committed to carrying Pete tomorrow. You accept your fate with quiet dread. One of the older women shows you how to weave a small wool pouch, the kind used for holding herbs, coins, or small stones with supposed magical properties. You choose to fill yours with a few pine needles, a smooth pebble, and a single tuft of Scrapy's hair. Unintentional, but probably lucky. In the evening, the ashfall thickens again. To lift the mood, the grandfather recites a passage from an old Icelandic saga. His voice is dry but strong, filling the room with images of warriors, sea beasts, and long-lost fjords. You understand none of the words, but all of the weight, then suddenly laughter. The eldest son mimics a line from the saga with exaggerated dramatics, stumbling across the room with a wooden spoon as a sword. He pretends to duel Scrapy, who responds by headbutting him in the thigh. The room erupts into delighted chaos. You laugh until your face aches. Historians often point to these indoor moments, games, stories, small joys, as the glue that held isolated communities together. Through long winters and natural disasters, when the sky turned black and the wind screamed, families turned inward, building warmth from shared breath and memory. That night, the wind picks up again. You help secure the door with a wooden bar, adding a woven cloth to seal the edges. It flaps softly as the gusts rise. A strange comfort, this ritual of defense. You return to your corner. Your blanket is warm from the hearth. Scrapy curls beside you, hooves twitching in his sleep. As you drift off, you can still hear the grandfather's voice echoing in your ears. Half legend, half lullaby. And outside, the world turns slowly under a blanket of ash and stars. You wake up on the seventh day, your final day here, with a strange sensation, familiarity. The smell of wood smoke no longer makes you wince. Your feet, while still tender, slide into your ash-dusted boots with something resembling grace. Even your shoulders, sore as they are, rise to the day's labor with minimal complaint. You're not comfortable, exactly, but you've learned to navigate the discomfort. Today the family has planned something special, a communal gathering, a shared meal. You're not sure if it's for you or just well-timed coincidence, but no one says anything directly, which, in Icelandic hospitality, probably means it's a big deal. After a modest breakfast of barley porridge and skyr, you help prepare for the event. The house becomes a whirlwind of activity. Dough is kneaded, herbs are dried, the good bowls are pulled from the storage chest. Even the tallow candle with the straightest wick gets center stage. Outside, you fetch water from the stream. It's less frozen now, and the sky above, for once, is clear. Pale sunlight touches the snow in shy patches. You catch your reflection in the water and barely recognize yourself. Wind-swept, soot-speckled, sharpened. The neighbors begin to arrive in the late morning, bundled figures trudging through snowdrifts, baskets in hand, laughter ahead of them. You help shovel a makeshift path and greet each arrival with a nod and whatever Icelandic you've picked up. Mostly just yes, goat, and cold. Inside, space is cleared for seating. Benches are pulled close. The youngest children perch on fur-covered crates. The room is packed, warm, alive with the layered noise of shared stories, inside jokes, clinking spoons, and bubbling pots. The meal begins with a thin soup, lamb, herbs, and a rare onion slice or two, followed by flatbread, rye, and goat cheese. Someone breaks out a jar of berry preserves that tastes like sunshine stored in glass. One man offers a song, a gentle, slow melody about a fisherman lost at sea but returned in a dream. Another joins in. Then a third. Soon, the room is filled. with voices off-key but sincere, layered like the folds of wool in every garment. You're pulled into a game of knuckle-bones, a combination of luck, reflex, and possibly goat-blessed dice. You win a piece of dried fruit. It is immediately stolen by Scrappy. Later, the grandmother surprises everyone by reciting a poem, short, sharp, and entirely about the frustrations of laundry. It brings down the house. Even the stoic grandfather cracks a smile. You realize, somewhere in the middle of this gentle chaos, that you're not just surviving anymore, you're participating. You help clean up afterward, carrying dishes to the cold stream, scrubbing with snow and shared laughter. As twilight settles, the guests slowly depart, fading into the snow like pilgrims retreating into the book of the land. The house returns to stillness. The fire pops once, the only sound. You sit by the hearth, the last of the steam rising from the cleaned bowls beside you. A child hands you a carved figurine, simple, wooden, shaped like a fish. A parting gift. You thank them in a halting whisper. They nod solemnly and return to their wool bundle, falling asleep instantly. You lie back in your usual corner. The blanket is heavy, familiar. Your body aches, but your mind is still. You did it. 7 days in 18th-century Iceland. You didn't thrive. You didn't triumph. But you endured. And that, in this place, means everything. The fire has burned low now. Just embers remain, soft and glowing like old memories. Around you, the turf house breathes in its quiet way. Walls settling, wind whispering gently outside, the air thick with warmth and something older than comfort. You lie still, eyes barely open, heart calm in your chest. Scrappy is asleep by your side, making little sounds that might be dreams or just goat thoughts. Either way, it's soothing. You think back over the week, the cracked bread, the smoke-stained wool, the wind that chewed through your bones like time itself. But also the singing, the silence, the hush of snow falling on moss, the way the cold eventually stopped biting and started cradling. You remember the ash, the stories, the people who said so little and meant so much. And now it's time to rest. You pull the blanket tighter. The weight of it presses you gently towards sleep. The world outside, for all its sharpness, cannot reach you here. Not tonight. Not in this small, fire-lit circle of stillness. Somewhere in the distance, maybe a sheep bleats. Maybe it's just your imagination. You don't need to know. All that matters is that you are warm, you are safe. You are here. Breathe slowly, deeper. Let the tension slip from your hands, your shoulders, your jaw. Let the rhythm of breath match the flicker of the final coals. Let your mind drift back to the sound of soft snow and old stories. Let it go. Let yourself sleep. Sweet dreams.